Hi guys, I'm going to continue with another moccasin making video, and this is a different kind of moccasin than the first one. The first video was about a really easy moccasin to make. This one's a little more complicated, but not much. And this is for a pucker toe center seam moccasin, like in these pictures here. So let's get started. And if you want to know all the materials that you need to do moccasins, then look at that first video about moccasins that I put up here. Also, if this video is helpful to you, please subscribe. It helps me immensely, and I certainly do appreciate all my good subscribers. Okay, first step in making these center seam pucker toe moccasins like the Cherokee and Iroquois Indians wore is to measure the length of your foot with a thick sock on. I'm using a tape measure here, but you can use a piece of string or whatever works for you. And since each of these moccasins requires a pretty big hunk of leather, it's best to make a pattern using on a piece of cardboard like I'm doing here. Okay, my shrimpy little foot is 10 inches long from heel to toe. So I'm going to write that down, and then I'm going to draw a straight line right in the middle of the cardboard using my little ruler here. I'm going to draw this line 10 inches long. And of course, if you used a piece of string, you can just put the string out and use it as your measurement. I am left-handed, so I hope this doesn't throw you righties off. If it does, you can record this video and then just reverse it if that would help. Next, I'm going to extend this 10-inch line with 2 fingers at the top and then 2 fingers at the bottom. You could look at it this way: 2 fingers at the toe and then 2 fingers at the heel. This will give you enough room to do the pucker toe and the heel. Next, I divide 10 inches by 2 to get 5 inches. That's half the length of my foot. So if your foot's 12 inches long, you divide that by 2 and get 6. Very complicated mathematics. Next, I mark the 5 inches on my ruler. And here again, you can do this on a string. Just make sure you don't use a piece of string that's stretchy. Probably a leather thong would not work because it stretches. Next, I extend that 5-inch length down from the 2-finger mark at the top. Not the top of my foot, but the top of my foot plus the 2-finger mark. And I make a mark at the bottom there. That bottom mark is going to be the center of a half circle that's going to be 5 inches in radius. So I'm marking this 5-inch half circle all the way down until the ruler is basically perpendicular to the center line. And this will be the shape of the toe of the moccasin, or half, a half of pattern here. Now just connect the dots and make that moccasin toe curve there. By the way, none of this has to be precision accuracy. Once you get the toe sewed up, then you can always test it on your foot to see how it's going to be. Matter of fact, you should test it on your foot at every stage of the process. Now I'm just extending a straight line that's parallel to the center line down as far as the heel, my heel mark plus the 2-finger mark. And that'll be the bottom of the leather. So this horizontal line that I'm drawing is at the heel plus 2-finger location, and it marks the bottom of the moccasin. If you're unsure about your work, you can make it 3 fingers at the bottom. That will be okay because you can always cut off the excess. Hey, this is the moccasin half pattern. So we cut it out with our handy dandy scissors and or razor knife. And there she blows. Now we're ready to put it on some leather. The reason we made this half pattern is so that when we lay out our leather, we can see if we've got enough leather to make the full cut. This half pattern is just half of the piece that we need to cut. So we fiddle around with it on a piece of leather until we get a fit, and then we start tracing around the pattern. Then you flip it over and trace around that side too, and that'll be your enough leather traced out for one moccasin. Takes a lot of leather to make these center seam moccasins, and that's why the first moccasin video is recommended if you have smaller hunks of leather, because you can do it with scraps, and conceptually it's easier to figure out than this one. Here is the leather for moccasin number 1. I would not use this as a pattern to cut out moccasin number 2 until I make sure that moccasin number 1 fits well. Next step is marking the holes for the pucker toe. And I use the width of my finger to space these holes. And we're going to have a hole right on the center line, and then 5 additional holes to the left and 5 additional holes to the right. So we're going to have a total of 11 holes, 1 finger width apart. If you want to be more accurate than I'm doing right here with my right side holes, you can mark your left side holes, punch them out, and then fold your moccasin in half and repunch in those same holes, and that'll punch the other side and make them exactly the same. I recommend this, but you don't have to. Now I'm punching the 11 holes with my handy dandy puncher. You can get this puncher on Amazon. It's a puncher to make a hole in a watch band. And I've sent a Amazon picture about it on that first moccasin video. Just for fun, I've decided to go ahead and fold the moccasin in half and punch again through the first 5 holes into the other side so that all the holes will be symmetrical all the way around. And you see these little clips that I'm using that you can get on Amazon. They help a lot. Okay, now we're ready for sewing. Okay, now I attach the thread to the 5th hole on one side, it doesn't matter, and then do the in and out stitch through these holes all the way around to make the pucker. And since I like the rough side out on my moccasins, I'm sewing this so that when I pull the pucker tight, it will be puckered in the wrong side out position. You'll see what I mean. Shiny side out. Next, I pull the thread as tight as I can get it to make the pucker. And I hold the pucker tight with my fingers while I tie it as tight as I possibly can. You can use any method you want as long as you get it good and tight. Now I'm pulling the 2 sides of the pucker together and once again tying them together as tight as I possibly can. And just knotting that off. the pucker toe is complete. And notice the moccasin is wrong side out. I'm getting ready to do the tongue, and that will be sewed on in the wrong side out position. The heel will be sewed together in the wrong side out position, but then the cuff, which goes around the top, will be sewed on in the right side out position. You'll see. Now I'm laying down 4 fingers from the pucker, and I'm going to mark that. And then I'm going to sew that up. You can use those little clips to help you hold the 2 sides together. And when I sew, I just punch a few holes and then sew a few holes, punch a few more holes, and sew those holes like that. I'm using the in and out stitch, and you'll see how that works. And then I'm going to back stitch that so that the in and out stitch is doubled. The double in and out stitch is super strong. By the way, for me, really strong thread is the best thing to use on moccasins. I don't use thongs to sew moccasins because you have to have really big holes that can break out, and it's hard to make a thong that's small enough and yet strong enough. The Indians use sinew, which is more like thread, to sew their moccasins.
Could you turn that light back on, Jim? Do you mind turning that light back on? I think it gives me more light for this. Thank you.
My pet chipmunks are speaking. So when I get to the end here, I knot this off, and then I'll go back and double sew it, even though I don't think I show that here. Time to make the tongue now, and I use a pattern for this too. The tongue for this moccasin is a square, and for me it's 4 fingers wide. It probably will work for you too. 4 fingers one way, 4 fingers the other way, a 4-finger wide square. The moccasin tongue. Since I'm sewing this all wrong side out, you can see the moccasin tongue is put in there with the shiny side up or the shiny side out. When the moccasin's turned right side out, then it'll be the rough side of the tongue that shows, which is what I like. I notice here that I have not yet double sewed the seam from the pucker toe up toward the tongue, but I did go back later and double sew that with the in and out stitch.
Bluetooth to put? No, my Bluetooth is being charged. I think a headset. Gotcha. Some headphones. Yeah, gotcha. Good job.
Gonna put a knot in the thread right here, and then I'm gonna go right back and double sew this seam. And notice on the other side of the moccasin, I'm sewing the tongue in the adjacent side from the side that I sewed first, not the opposite side. In other words, the tongue's going to look like a diamond when it's completely sewn in, not a square. When I come to the end of the stitch, I always knot it before I head back to double stitch it. Now double stitching the tongue. Hey guys, I'm a bad boy because I forgot to show details of how you do the heel. So I'm going to tell you about it and then show you some parts of it. After you get the tongue sewed, turn the moccasin right side out and try it on your socked foot and see how the heel comes together. If the heel's too loose, then pinch it in and mark it with a pin so that when you turn it wrong side out again, you'll be able to transfer that mark to the wrong side outside so that you can sew it. This heel has been sewn together, and see how you just sew the two sides flat like this? You don't have to do anything fancy. If you want to, and I recommend it, see where the thread, where my finger's looking right there, where the thread comes down to the heel, you can kind of take some scissors and round that off before you double sew it to make the moccasin fit a little bit better around the heel. Now I'm just trimming things up, and don't worry about the moccasin leaking at the heel. We're going to seal it with some waterproof glue once we're done, and also there's no such thing as a waterproof moccasin. Now it's time to make the flap that goes around the upper part of the moccasin, and I use, once again, 4-finger wide strip of leather that's long enough to reach all the way around like this. Fastest pin in the West. Checking to make sure that the flap that I'm cutting is long enough to go all the way around the moccasin top, from tongue to tongue. Now I turn the moccasin right side out for this procedure, and I wrap the cuff around the moccasin shiny side out, because when the moccasin's worn, that's going to be folded up and the rough side's going to be showing. Just making both sides of the top of the moccasin even. Once again, I do the in and out stitch till I get to the end, and then I come back with it, doubling the in and out stitch so that you get a double in and out. doubling the in and out stitch now. All done with the sewing. Let's try this baby on. Now here is the way that the Indians really tied their moccasins so that they would stay on good. If you want, you can get these Dr. Scholl's inserts to make it more comfy. This is one for a left foot. Or you can just cut a piece of leather and stick it in there. If your moccasins don't fit exactly right, then do what the Cherokees did. Wet them down completely, put them on, and then walk them dry. Then you can do some decoration stuff. This is all I usually do for decoration, is to cut a strip that goes down the middle of the moccasin long ways, the toe part, and I glue it on with waterproof glue, and that way it seals that seam on top and kind of gives the moccasin a cool look. Don't let the glue drip down onto the inside of the moccasin, because when it gets hard, it'll hurt your toe. You can put a piece of duct tape on the inside of that pucker toe and foot seam to keep the glue out. I'm not going to glue this on yet because I may wet the moccasins and walk them dry to make them fit good. Then I'll do all this. I'm just showing you what I do. Doesn't that make it look better? Hey guys, after you're happy with the way your moccasins fit, then take some waterproof glue and go around the seams on the outside of the moccasin to kind of help make them strong and waterproof them. Also, I usually coat the bottom of the bottom of the sole with at least one layer of that waterproof glue. It helps to seal it up a little bit and give it a little extra wear and tear. You can also make a foot size pattern like this out of leather and actually glue that to the bottom if you want extra sole support. And the final step would be to spray it with some of that silicone spray to help it be waterproof. I usually just rub some coconut oil into the top to affect that, but it won't be waterproof. No matter what you do to your moccasin, it's not going to be completely waterproof. That's why you should have several pairs of moccasins if you're going to be out in wet weather, so that you can dry a pair and wear a pair like that. Okie dokie. Hope this was helpful. If so, please subscribe and have a lot of fun making and wearing your moccasins.